Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and dear audience. I welcome all of you on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada to today's session titled Passing the Torch, Youth in the Disarmament Movement. As we always do, we shall do the treaty acknowledgement now. The Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota and Dene peoples, and in the original lands of Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Dear audience, today we have gathered two youth activists from Winnipeg and two leaders on this whole campaign against nuclear weapon. We all understand we are beset with so many conflicts, so many challenges in the world. But one thing, as a researcher, I personally believe the most existential threat is the threat from nuclear weapon. Nothing matters that can destroy the world other than the nuclear weapon. And just to set this scene for the dear audience, on June 24th of this year, something very important happened in this city, because the city of Winnipeg and City Council voted in favor of a resolution supporting the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapon, in short TPNW, following a youth-led initiative advocating for the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapon, popularly known as Eigen Cities Appeal. Winnipeg joins Toronto, Vancouver, Halifax, Victoria, Montreal, and 9 other Canadian municipalities in endorsing the Eigen Cities Appeal. Ladies and gentlemen, today you will hear right from the youth activist and others, those who guided this whole campaign. Let me set the sequence here. I would welcome David Gerald Newman, the peace builder and Rotarian from the Winnipeg Rotary Club, to moderate the session, and we'll follow the sequence as we have said before during the process. So without further ado, David, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Kaiser. As always, we are grateful for CRRIC through you hosting an important discussion. This is a learning experience for those who are new to the whole concept of the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the international coalition that was behind that won the Nobel Peace Prize. And we are thrilled to have, under this passing the torch topic, a couple of torch carriers, Estelle Lamoureux and Maureen Brauer. And I will follow the pattern of having each person introduce themselves. Estelle will be going first and introduce herself, and then Maureen Brauer, and then we'll move on to the keynotes in this particular panel, Rouge Ali and Avinash Singh, two amazing young people. Rouge still in high school, Avinash just a graduate. River East Collegiate deserves the credit for contributing to the freedom and encouragement and support for these young people to take on the bold and courageous step to involve themselves in a controversial topic at this point in human history, the abolition of nuclear weapons. So I give you my friend and retired educator, but retired means she's got a whole new set of racing car Pirellis, and she is a great torch carrier. And Estelle will now go first. Estelle.
Thank you so much, David. First of all, thank you for inviting me. This is truly an honor. And I'll just share a little bit about myself before we begin. I am a retired educator. I'm also a regional director and director for the Ethics Bowl Canada. and a longtime member of the Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties. Plus, I'm the chair of education for the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, plus the co-chair with my friend Maureen for the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. I do want to acknowledge that what I'm going to share right now wouldn't have happened without Rotary District 5550 and the Winnipeg Rotary Club through the direction with the support of David and Brenda Newman. It's with them that this was able to happen. Now, what we did is we set out some goals, and the goals were, we thought maybe lofty, but we were determined to do them. And the goals were that it would be youth-led. So the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit was an idea based on youth leadership. And as a longtime educator, we know that this is a way for a sustainable future. The other, providing leadership opportunities to youth, was important to us. Also, we needed to support the truth and reconciliation, and also create a network of advocates. And finally, the outcome would create a youth nuclear peace treaty. So how did we start this? We knew that we had to train. So a year before the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit, which was held in Winnipeg in October of 2019, we started approaching, we had 8 schools, 1 in California, and the rest were basically from Winnipeg. And the training, we did 4 training sessions, and it was on specific topics. Each school had a different topic to research and prepare in order to give a workshop. Needless to say, it took on a life of its own. The youth, after each session, we could see that they became more and more comfortable and more empowered. And we had different guest speakers that came in to support them, such as the University of Manitoba, law faculty. And we had, it was actually awe-inspiring for us as adults to watch them become who they are now, leaders. So what happened after that, it was basically the youth became responsible for the front end of the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. They were involved in every single aspect from the start to the finish. We even had an Indigenous school, Children of the Earth, who were the keynotes at the beginning. So we're deeply committed to that, the reconciliation as well. And it was, the students were able to grasp the work that they had to do over the 3 days. And the treaty they came out with was by far something that we had never even thought that they would come out at such a short time frame. So so what did we learn? We learned a lot. We learned a lot is never to underestimate youth. Sometimes all they need is a helping hand, and just to help the stage, sharing our networks with them, making sure that they have what they need, and just get out of their way. It's sometimes that simple. But what has also happened is that they are not only, there's 2 here, but that is not the only ones that are now active in different other areas of sustainability, or it could be climate change, or lowering the voting age to 16. They are active. They know that they can now speak up. And that is what the reward is for us. We know that going forward, their future is more secure because they have the skills they have. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to now turn it over to my dear friend, Maureen.
Good morning, everyone. Again, as Estelle said, it's a pleasure to be here today and also to have the opportunity to speak to you about nuclear disarmament, particularly with youth. I'm Maureen Brauer, co-founder of the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit, together with my friend Estelle, coordinator of community peace initiatives for the Sohagakai International Association of Canada, and International Physicians for Prevention of Nuclear War Canada board member. I first became aware of the impact of nuclear weapons when I was a youth, when I toured an exhibit, Nuclear Arms Threat to Our World, co-sponsored by Sgi Canada. The humanitarian impact in particular struck me, and it sparked a desire in me to become a peace builder. In Sgi Canada activities that I participated in, I embraced the ideas that one person can make a difference, that each person has something unique to offer to the whole, that taking concrete action towards an inspired future, an imagined future, is the way of creating hope, and that the power and passion of youth is essential for continued advancement. I became a peace educator, and together with my teacher husband began taking various exhibits into the community and schools. And in fact, that's how I developed my friendship with Estelle. And we supported each other in those efforts. Through those efforts, we made like-minded friends, David, Causer, and others, as we worked together for Peace Days events. When the idea for the Youth Summit emerged, we knew we could count on each other to work hard to make the summit a success. Each of us on the planning group reached out to our like-minded friends who connected us to others working in the area. A growing network supported and inspired us. We built lasting relationships with fellow peace builders. Sorry, my phone's ringing. We became aware of innumerable people working together for nuclear disarmament and peace in concrete ways. The idea of youth leading youth, presenting to each other, having dialogue about nuclear issues and peace, and writing a treaty together that would be submitted to the United Nations was an idea that proved to be of great interest worldwide. Word spread from one person to another and via the website, youthnuclearpeacesummit.org. I received emails from a youth organization in Bangladesh, from the Al Jazeera network looking for a youth panelist, from a director at the United Nations interested in the format, and from educators in Japan. It became apparent that there is a widespread awareness of the need to engage youth in nuclear disarmament discourse. The success of the Youth Summit became an inspiration to other organizations who are asking themselves the question, how do we pass the torch to the next generation of peace builders and activists? Recently, youth leaders from International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War Canada, Sgi Canada, Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, and Voice of Women met with Estelle, Rooj, Avinash, and I to learn about the how-to of the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. From that, we established a commitment for collaboration and support for each other moving forward. Several organizations are creating opportunities for youth internships, for mentoring youth, hiring youth for media projects, creating opportunities for learning together through one-to-one engagement or group webinars with long-term activists sharing how they have had success in their respective fields. The Youth Nuclear Peace Summit has recently been accepted as a partner of Eigen, leading to an even greater network of action and support. Before and at the end of the summit, we were approached by teachers asking for resources and education about how to engage students in the topics of nuclear weapons and how to teach peace. This is another area of development. New opportunities for engagement are evolving. I encourage anyone who is listening and interested in joining the nuclear disarmament movement to take a step. Engage someone in dialogue about what you learned today. Find a like-minded friend who will work with you and take action together. Reach out to any one of us or any of the organizations that I have mentioned. And now I will pass it over to Rooj and Avinash, from whom you will learn a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maureen, and thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk about this very important topic, and especially the discussion of youth engagement. My name is Rooj Ali. I am the youth co-chair of the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit, as well as a youth coordinator for Reverse the Trend, which Avinash and I will touch a little bit on in our presentation today. As Estelle said, initially we really got introduced to this topic through our involvement with the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. And at the summit, we learned a lot about nuclear weapons, power, energy, and any topic that relates to that discussion as a whole. Avinash and I were able to really grow with this and take a look at a discussion that we hadn't really explored before and something that we weren't taught at school or anything in that form. So taking part in the summit really opened our eyes to something that was new and something that we really we're beginning to understand the weight of as we continue to explore. At the summit, a really important topic that we kind of discussed on, and something that the treaty that we created was based on, was the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which we were able to learn about. And this treaty primarily focuses on lessening the distribution of nuclear weapons in the states around the world. And through learning about this treaty, we were able to also learn about the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Now, this one is the one that we've been focusing on the most recently with our work with the Eigen Cities Appeal. The NPT primarily focuses on lessening distribution, but it does also say that in the long run, it will have state parties dismantle their nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, those activities have not been active. And so that's where the TPNW comes into play, because this treaty does not come in conflict with the NPT. It more so builds on it, and it calls for all state parties to dismantle and disarm their nuclear weapons. And Canada is not a signatory to this treaty. And Avinash and I, with this information, felt that we wanted to take action and try to do something on a local and municipal level, which is how we got introduced to the Eigen Cities Appeal, which encourages municipalities to take action and do something about the TPNW and get their cities and their local governments to do something and say something about what their federal governments should do. And so Avinash and I felt really empowered and encouraged after learning about this, and we felt that this was something we could do on a local level. And we continued to try to educate ourselves through the means of different resources and through our advisors, which are on this call today. And so we learned a lot, and we had a lot of guidance, which we really appreciated, because that was something we felt was difficult in the beginning, was navigating the processes in this as youth activists. Oftentimes, there aren't many resources readily available for youth who are interested in taking initiative. And so we found that initially it was hard to get a start and get going with it. But as we continued to progress and made very valuable connections and learn about and educate ourselves about these topics and different treaties, we were able to really understand how much we could do. And that motivated us to continue further and really understand the impact we could have individually as youth activists. Because initially we didn't think we could have this big of an influence on these kinds of discussions. But the more we learned and were able to kind of navigate through the legal jargon of it all, and the big terms that oftentimes people can find overwhelming, we were able to feel, okay, this is something we can do, and this is something we can have an impact on. And so we continued from there and took part in the Eigen Cities Appeal, which has so far been our most recent project and success in Winnipeg. And here I'll pass it on to Avinash to tell you a little bit more about that and kind of moving forward.
Avinash, please check the microphone. Thank you. Oh, Avinash, can you hear us? Okay, so if you kindly check your microphone once again, that would be appreciated. In the meantime, let me go back to Rouge and ask one interesting question in the, I'm taking it from the press release that was given on June 24th. So you said, Rouge, that as youth leaders, a future free of nuclear weapon is a future we believe in, and one that we encourage all, no matter how young or old, to work towards. It is in your hands that we take action to better our future, unquote. So what do you think? Do you find a lot of followers like you folks in the in your age group and in your classes and your neighborhoods, those who believe like you? What is the experience when you campaigned, if you share with the audience?
Of course. So we are actively trying to reach out to more youth that could possibly be interested. But a common barrier that Avinash and I come across is that there's an educational barrier. Most youth are not educated on this topic, and there are not resources available. Schools don't have a curriculum in play that talks about these discussions, and it's not really focused on, because oftentimes there's a sense that this threat of nuclear war, anything nuclear, is something distant. Since the last time something really big that's happened, like the events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, was over 75 years ago. With that long span of time, people are kind of mentally distancing themselves from this discussion. And so anytime we bring up this topic, there is often a sense of people are just not aware, and they don't understand what it is, and they don't understand the weight of it. And so before we can even begin our discussions, before we can even start to encourage youth to get involved, we have to really focus on educating them, because it is a heavy discussion, and it is a very heavy topic that cannot be taken lightly. It needs to be approached very maturely and appropriately in order to properly educate youth about the topic at hand, because they are big discussions, especially when you bring in terms like TPNW and NPT and all of these very broad descriptions. It can be overwhelming to young people who have never even discussed the topic of nuclear weapons, power, or energy. And so that was something we're constantly trying to combat, and something we're constantly trying to navigate around is trying to get youth to understand and learn about the topic before we even get to the point of saying you can take action. So we're taking it one step at a time, and that's kind of primarily what we've come across. But we are hoping in time that'll kind of lessen as we continue to broaden the number of youth who are interested.
Thank you. So Avinash, let's try your part again. Are you good? Okay.
So let's just test this out. Can you hear me? Perfect. All right, so we'll just go over then the Eigen Cities Appeal, how Rooj and I got into it. First of all, what it is, how we got into it, what motivated us to keep going, and ultimately what we learned and what made it so successful. So the Eigen Cities Appeal is essentially a pledge for municipalities all around the world to sign on, showcasing their support for this treaty called the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And I'll just refer to it as the TPNW. And it's the first ever treaty in international law that explicitly states that state parties to it are not allowed to have nuclear weapons. And if they did, they would commit to disarmament. Not only that, for other state parties, they would actively do their part in encouraging others to sign on. So not just dismantling current arms, but also committing on implementing a comprehensive plan for the future in which nuclear weapons will not be part of our reality. So it covers all aspects of nuclear weapons and seeks to eliminate it entirely, the first ever treaty to do so. And cities naturally being the target of attacks and having previously been attacked, as we've seen the destruction in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is extremely scary to think that one day the city you call home could be wiped off the map in an instant. And to think that the technology has come by so far, and that even with some levels of disarmament taking place, there are still countries committed to advancing their current nuclear weapons program. So it'll only take one nuclear weapon to cause a massive amount of destruction in cities today compared to where we were 70 years ago when we could observe those direct effects in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the Eigen Cities Appeal gives a voice, a platform for cities to show their support. And most of these cities are from countries that are not just part of countries where they have already signed on to the TPNW, but mostly from countries that haven't. So Canada, for example, we already have around 12 cities to sign on and many more to come, as well as other NATO countries. We must keep in mind that being a part of NATO, even if you don't have nuclear weapons on your soil, part of being in that military alliance, you're entitled to have it in the event of a conflict in which there hasn't been any so far, but there's still provisions in NATO that allow countries to do so. So this cities appeal, it gives voices to cities, but it also gives a direct voice to citizens living in the cities to have their voices heard, acknowledged, and also have it acted upon. And Rooj and I, as youth, as soon as we found out about this ICANN cities appeal, we knew something had to be done about it. And for us, coming from Winnipeg, a human rights city, as our mayor would like to exemplify it, a city with a home to 800,000 people of all sorts of and all walks of life. So it was very important to us, and as youth, seeing that other cities were taking on the pledge, that our city also joined. So we started just going to the outline. We had no idea what to do as youth trying to navigate this bureaucratic process. But thanks to our advisors, Estelle, Maureen, David, as well as our endorsing organizations, we were able to get a framework to begin. So we understood that to build credibility for our campaign, we'd have to reach out. And that often started from cold emails or from making use of the connections that we had, but maybe have not contacted since the summit. So prepping all of that together, contacting organizations and people to help us throughout. And once we had secured enough organizations, that's when we felt really confident that this could really go somewhere. And the way the city of Winnipeg works is that to get a motion to pass, we'd have to introduce it through certain subcommittees, and that's exactly what we did. And through a lot of time, perseverance, and a lot of going over the outline and trying to revise our expectations, as well as what we want to see coming out of it, we were able to pass through 3 subcommittees, ultimately making it to the full council meeting on June 24th. And we were ecstatic because just prior to this council meeting, we were able to present to city councilors individually. And the number one issue that we had was not the lack of support or the lack of moral integrity to our cause. There was so much of that already. But the number one thing was the lack of awareness. No one knew what we were doing. And very few people even understood the significance of the ICANN Cities Appeal. But once they did, and once they understood the power of youth and the mobilization of our voices, and they understood why we cared so much, because among other issues that we'll be inheriting, there's still going to be a world full of nuclear weapons. And we didn't want to stay silent as that happened. And they understood. And that's why they supported us unanimously. And we were ecstatic on that day, but we knew so much work still had to be done. So what did we learn? We learned that our local politicians should be held accountable if they don't speak, or at least acknowledge the issue of nuclear disarmament. Number one. Number two, we learned that as youth, city councilors and other municipal positions, they're very easily accessible. And it was up to us to reach out. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what we were doing. So it did take a lot of time, but eventually we were able to go through the names and meet with very, very important people who also gave us advice along the way. And that's what we also understood, that it really wasn't that hard. We just had to reach out, explain, build credibility, and then move on from there. And number three, it was also becoming familiar with the bureaucratic process of trying to get motions to pass. Because it doesn't happen in an instant. It takes weeks, months, maybe even years. But for us, the most important thing was keeping true to what we believed in. And we truly believed that we had the ability to get this motion to pass, to see that even if it was ultimately symbolic, this ICANN Cities Appeal, that if it had some impact and encouraged people to talk more about it, then that in itself was a success. And that wouldn't have happened without the advice that we had along the way, but also what we learned coming off from the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. So all those things that we learned, it's going to motivate us to keep on going with the ICANN Cities Appeal and take this to other municipalities, not just within our province, but throughout Canada. Because the more people know about it, and the more youth join this mobilization and empower themselves to make a change in the disarmament movement, then we can move beyond that point of awareness and towards a point of action. But it's going to take a long time, and Rooj and I, we're so happy to have made it this far, and we'll be doing everything that we can as we move forward to encourage other youth to join. Because it can be scary knowing that we have a lot of work to do, but it's incredibly empowering knowing that It just took 2 youth, some advisors, very, very supportive organizations and city councilors. It only took 2 youth, ultimately, to get this motion to pass. And look where we are now. So we still have a long ways to go. But until then, more youth should definitely join this campaign, just as they're empowered by the climate change movement. That's it for just giving an overview of the ICANN Cities Appeal. I think I will turn it to Rooj so she can explain more about Reverse the Trend.
Of course. So while Avinash was explaining about the ICANN Cities Appeal, he mentioned some of the support we've received. So along with our advisors, we also received support from Reverse the Trend, which was a project that was launched earlier this year, the day before the TPNW went into force. And what Reverse the Trend does is it really amplifies the voices of those that are on frontline communities and that are impacted by nuclear testing and nuclear kind of attacks of any sort. And so this project is really focused on youth voices, and we've worked really closely with them and are going to be, in our actions moving forward with the ICANN Cities Appeal, we'll also be working very closely with Reverse Trend and our advisors. So it was important to mention them since they had, amongst our other endorsing organizations, they were very supportive of our actions and were able to provide us with a lot of encouragement and connections when needed. And so that is something that we were able to continue, working with and utilizing as we moved forward and navigated this entire process and trying to accomplish this in our city. And hopefully as we move forward to try to expand this to other municipalities within our province, and hopefully even beyond that, once we see what kind of success we can replicate in other cities as well. That's kind of.
I'm wondering, Rooj, are you going to speak more broadly about the international aspects of Reverse the Trend and the kind of support you're getting internationally, you and Avinash? The other thing I'd really like you to do is address what kinds of organizations did you get endorsements from to effectively give you tools to persuade the local politicians that this was credibly supported by other organizations. So I leave it between you and Avinash now to carry on with the bulk of the discussion. If you want to pose questions to Estelle or ask her observations and Maureen, I'd like Maureen at some point to explain a little bit more about SGI, Sokagakai Institute, and its world kind of stature, and its being a member of the partners with ICANN. So I leave it, turn it back to you, Raj, and then over to Avinash.
Of course. So kind of answering the question you just most recently brought up was what organizations endorsed our campaign. And I will kind of give you kind of like a brief list of the ones that we were really surprised by, not more so surprised by, but just really happy with, which included Rotary Club of Winnipeg, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, Mennonite Central Committee, SGI, and we can also use the ICANN Partners logo since we were doing this through the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. Other organizations such as the Canadian Network to Abolish Nuclear Weapons and Reverse the Trend and many others. So that was kind of a broad spectrum of the organizations that supported us. And what I'd also really like to highlight is the intersectionalities of each one of these organizations. Each one kind of represents a different sector of our society, some focusing on refugee and immigrant work, while others have a focus on climate work, and others are primarily focused on nuclear disarmament and any kind of nuclear work. And so what this shows you is all of these organizations, whilst having focuses on various different topics, believed in this common goal and understanding that nuclear war was something that no city, no country, no amount of people should be concerned about, and something that all people from all walks of life can have a say in. So that was something we were really happy to kind of exemplify and bring up, is the intersectionalities and how all of these different parts of our society are able to cross over into one another and come to meet in the middle on this mutual agreement that this is something that's very important and impacts everybody, whether or not they are active members of this movement and whether or not they are actively trying to do something, is that no matter where you are coming from, you can have a say. And that was something we really noticed while we reached out to organizations for their endorsements and support, is how they all believed in this common goal. And we're hoping that we can continue reaching out to people from all these different areas as we continue forward. To answer your second question, I think I might pass it on to Avinash on the first trend on the international side.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts of that question. I'll address both. So just giving then a international focus on Reverse the Trend network, as well as the international support that we've received and the attention that we received and why that matters. So Rooj did give a very good overview of Reverse the Trend, and it is basically a network of like-minded youth and as well as experienced leaders in the disarmament sector that care a lot about the voices of youth detrimentally affected and who are on the front lines of nuclear weapons, as well as the climate change crisis. So it's reiterating the fact that as youth, we will not only be inheriting a climate change dilemma, but as well as a world still dealing with the possible fallout of nuclear weapons and the destruction they pose. So putting those two together and highlighting the frontline youth that are affected, that's essentially what Reverse the Trend is. And it's a network as well as a way for youth to mobilize their action in their local areas while seeking advice on leaders and diplomats and others in highly esteemed positions so that they can get their advice moving forward. So the support and the attention that we received has been mainly through the city's appeal. And for us as youth trying to get our city to sign on, that was something that probably has not been done before for youth to lead the ICANN Cities Appeal campaign. And the support that we received has been really overwhelming, and it gives us confidence to keep on going. But we also understand that other youth who are maybe on the fence and are not feeling as comfortable trying to commit themselves to the disarmament movement, that they at least have an idea now of how much work it takes, given that we took several months to get our city to sign on, but still we had advisors to guide us through. So now we would like to act as advisors, getting off from the international attention and support for other youth so that they can continue and lead their city's appeal campaigns wherever they are. So why were we noticed? Primarily because we were youth, and also because we had the credibility behind our campaign from the organizations that Rooj has listed. And it's not just that, but it's also a desire to keep on going with the cause. So why should we care, and why should organizations care? It's because this is through firsthand experience. Most of the organizations and sectors and groups in the disarmament movement are having this dilemma of trying to attract youth to their organizations, groups, and so forth, ensuring the sustainability of their organization moving forward. And many organizations already have this plan, trying to attract youth to their causes, as well as having workshops, activities, and campaigns, opportunities for youth to lead, while others may not do so. And that puts their future outlook in jeopardy, because if you don't have youth continuing on your mission, then there's going to be not just a gap between the generations as to how well to move forward. Because for us as youth, we can mobilize easily, and we can use the power of social media to help us support our campaigns. But for older generations who may not be familiar with that could pose issues when they're trying to carry out their activities. So we care deeply about the attention that we receive, and we also understand that certain groups have not interacted with youth as often, and we're going to try to change that, encouraging youth to join and not take a leap of faith. They should never do that, because there's some credible NGOs and groups that really want to attract youth, but maybe don't know how. And from Rooj and myself, the easiest way to do that is holding workshops and events that encourage youth to talk. Once you go beyond the talking and educating, that's when you can empower youth to lead. And that's exactly the process that we went through from the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit, where we ourselves, for the first time, learned how huge of a movement it is. Yet we're not taught about it in our schools and the problems that we still have today. Once we got off from that, then we were able to really take on, and through mentorship and more workshops, we were able to take on the Cities Appeal campaign. So it's just making use of the attention, as well as giving attention and putting the spotlight on other youth who are maybe not just sure of whether to join, but how much they can contribute. And the truth is, not much. You only need, say, a handful of youth and a lot of passion, a lot of mentorship along the way to get something to go through. And that's what we went through, and we encourage other youth to join as well. Not just through Reverse the Trend, but other organizations and workshops which they can participate in.
Thank you so much. Rooj, what would you like to add to what Avinash has said? And then perhaps we could have Estelle and Kaiser and Maureen ask a few questions.
I think Avinash sums it up pretty well in us moving forward and kind of getting other youth involved as well. Just kind of to summarize it or to add a few last points is our goals moving forward. Now that we've done this in Winnipeg, we are looking to also replicate the success in other cities within our province as well. But we don't want to do it alone. And we're hoping that in having done this and having received media coverage, as well as having received all this attention from various groups and communities and people, we're hoping that that kind of attention is able to encourage and show other youth that they can also do something about it and take part. Because once we've done this, we've noticed that there have been youth that have been, encouraging, just, now that they've known about the topic and they understand what's going on somewhat, they are encouraging of it, but they still don't know. And I have, personally, in my own personal experience, I did receive comments from people around me and in my own inner circle of saying, wow, congratulations, this is very interesting, but I don't really understand what's going on. And once I was able to tell them and they were able to see something solid that's recently happened that was successful, they had more of a reason to take part. Instead of us just saying, this is an initiative that's happening, support us or take part in it without them actually seeing kind of something that's recent, something that they can go off of and say, okay, this has happened. If I take part, I can actually see results. Because oftentimes we notice that most youth, they want to see results. They want to see some kind of outcome from the work they put in. It's very rare to find people who are willing to put in lots and lots of work and not be sure of any kind of long-term result or goal that they can work towards. And so we're hoping that having had Winnipeg support and endorse the Eigen Cities Appeal and having had this kind of media attention and all this support we've gotten from these various groups, that we're able to take this and deliver it to youth and say, this is what we've done, and we're hoping that you can also do this as well, and maybe even on a bigger scale. Because just looking at the climate change movement and how much it's grown, we're able to take examples from that and look to that and say, wow, that is something that was able to happen through youth involvement, through youth engagement, and youth are primarily leading that movement. And we believe that that is the future for this movement as well. It is youth voices and youth empowerment and youth engagement. Because once youth take action and take the lead, this will kind of take over the world, we believe. And just by the way it's going right now and the way it's growing rapidly, we believe that that is an active role youth can have. And so we're looking forward to taking the results we've gotten from Winnipeg and take them forward and say, hey, we were able to do this, you can do it as well, and hopefully even on a bigger scale, because this isn't just limited to Avinash and I. There's countless other people who also want to do something, just don't really know where to start. And so I think that's kind of where I'll leave it at, and to summarize everything that we've talked about.
Well, this opens the door. That's beautiful. Both you and Avinash have just done an amazing job of educating the audience as to the amazing work that you have done. You have not emphasized enough the work that you went to and deserve enormous credit for and that is educating the endorsers. In many cases, to get the endorsements you did required educating the organizations of adults that you got support from. And that in itself, each case required a distinctive strategy, and you had to identify the needs. What did you have to do to educate them? But you did it. You did it. And that is something that youth across the country can learn from you about. But you wouldn't have been able to do it without networks. That is here in Winnipeg, but now spreading it across Canada and the world. So the first network that you were involved in is with ICANN. And maybe Maureen and you folks can talk about how you became a partner of ICANN and got their international support for what you're doing. And then Rotary being an international movement, SGI being an international movement, the Voices for Women, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, all these bodies have reach, and all of them are available to help you spread at the grassroots level the work that you're doing. So the wonderful example, I think, is SGI. So Maureen.
Maureen, just unmute your mic, please. Thank you.
The parent organization, Soka Gakkai, was formed in Japan after the war, and its first president, Josei Toda, made a call for the abolition of nuclear weapons in 1957. And he said not only the weapons themselves, but what is it that leads to the idea that it's all right to use them? Those are the things we need to challenge. And so the different organizations, SGI International, in different countries around the world have their own organization. It's basically a faith-based organization, and we're engaged in those initiatives and activities together at the United Nations. Because its belief in peace, culture, and education, SGI is involved in educational awareness. And as Rooj and Avinash said, when we met I was privileged to meet with two of the counselors together with them, and one of them very supportive, but she said she knew very little herself. So not only the young people, but many people are unaware of the impact of nuclear weapons. So it was through SGI that I became aware of the impact, and through that, as I mentioned earlier about the exhibit. And it was actually one of the exhibits that we were taking into schools called Everything You Treasure, Freeing the World from Nuclear Weapons, which was co-created by SGI and IPPNW. So what SGI does is it partners with like-minded organizations to create exhibits which provide awareness and education. All but every one of them has the core messages that one person can make a difference. So it's to inspire people to action. And so it was that exhibit. We were sitting around the table one day, Estelle and my husband and I, and said, we should do something. So we have this exhibit, let's do something with it. And that's what started this whole thing. So I think, as Josei Toda said, we have to address the idea that we have a shared humanity, that there's a dignity of our own lives and the lives of others that requires protection, and that we need to leave the present president of the Soka Gakkai International, Daisuke Wakeda, writes a peace proposal to the United Nations every year and always includes the need to address nuclear weapons. And his message is to leave no one behind, that everyone is connected to everyone else, and that through our the efforts that we make, we impact others, but also to care not only for ourselves, but to care for others, no matter who they are and where they might be located. So the fight sort of against nuclear weapons is for people and for the dignity of life itself. And Estelle, I want to leave you a few minutes because you want to add something?
For sure. This event is called Passing the Torch, and we're talking about a sustainable future of peace. And my question to the youth in this webinar is, we met you in 2018. You're not the same people today. And can you share, because we want to attract more youth. And my whole purpose in my life right now is engaging youth. And I want you to share what happened along this journey that you've taken and who you are now compared to who you were 3 years ago.
I'll just start off by saying that prior to the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit and almost prior to my involvement in all sorts of activism, I really wasn't sure. I was unsure of the impact that I could have individually on any cause, let alone disarmament. For me, it was building that confidence the past 3 to 4 years now. It's building that confidence slowly but surely, making connections along the way, and learning from mistakes, as well as believing in your ability to make a change. All those things, it didn't happen all in one night, and it's still a long process to go through. But the more of it that we do, such as having discussions like these and leading the I Can't Seize Appeal campaign, as well as maintaining a network, a cohesive network through Reverse the Trend. Doing all of that at a young age for us, it's important because it sets an example for others to follow, but also for ourselves. It gives us an idea of where we want to go next. And it all starts from building that confidence and believing in your ability to make a change. And when people believe in us, it empowers us to keep on going. And that's by far the most important thing for any youth to get involved in the disarmament movement, especially today. It's going through a revitalization, but that wouldn't be possible without the teachings that are being passed on to us, as well as through the mistakes that we make along the way and learning from them and learning everything that we can to be successful. It's not easy. We have mentors along the way, but it all starts from believing in yourself and having others believe in you. That's when change happens.
Yeah, I will add a little more to that as well. Estelle, I think you put it really wonderfully, is that we're very different people from how we started. Much like Avinash, when I started, I really didn't know what kind of impact I could have. I really didn't know about this topic as a whole. I was hesitant to even take part in the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit because my entire team from school was older than me. So they were all like a year older than me. And so everyone that was taking part was mainly, in their second or third year of high school, or they were even like beyond that. And I was in grade 9 at the time. So I really didn't know, and my confidence was in a completely different place as it is now. My speaking abilities and all kinds of skills that I've gained now were not really present at that time. And so I took part in this with no intention of really going very far. I knew that this really was something that aligned with my ethics, and I knew that this was something that was important to me because I believed in initiatives that involved human rights. And I believed in these things, and I just didn't really know what I could do. And so I took part in this as mainly a leap of faith. I didn't know what I could possibly do. And it was a little bit scary at the moment because most of the people doing it were older than me and were in different places in life. But in doing this, I was able to really understand myself better and grow from it and gain skills such as public speaking skills and organizational skills and all kinds that I can even take and apply them to other parts of my life, not just within this movement and within the work that I do. And so I really value those things that I've learned along the way. And I think those are skills and attributes that other youth can also gain if they were to take part in these activism work and were to actually take an active role in making a change, because you do gain very, very valuable lessons and skills that you can apply to all kinds of areas within your life. And that's just something that I've learned within my own experience, is that I learned a lot and I was able to take it and implement it into everywhere else. And so it really affected me in many more ways than I could possibly have imagined having started. And a big part to who I am now is greatly, I think I can attribute it to having taken part in this movement so young and so quickly and having had the support of so many people. And hopefully that how far I've come can also act as encouragement for other youth that are also interested in that they can also come just as far, hopefully even further, and grow a lot in their character and in their personalities and in their ethics as well.
Oh, wonderful. Kaiser, I turn it over to you to wrap this up, but what an amazing session. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Absolutely an amazing session. So, dear audience, you are with us for last 56 minutes, to be precise, and you have heard from two generations of, I would say, activists and motivators on this issue of nuclear disarmament. So, I mean, some of us are part of the fading out generation. Will fade out within next, a decade or so. But the most important part today is the lesson that we have prepared our next generation for taking on these activities. And those who have tuned with us today, we would like to share with you the idea that we all like to change the world in some way or other for the betterment of the world. And this is one of the reasons that we organizers, when we started planning this session with Rotary Club of Winnipeg Peace Builder Committee, we thought that it is super important to pass the messages of these young fellows to the broader audience, what they have achieved. And it is also important to showcase how younger and older generation can work together, build together, and bring effective changes in the world. Before I formally conclude, and I'm taking advantage as a moderator here, I would like to share a very, I would say, small piece of information that I was browsing through when our panelists were speaking. I'm sure this is a little bit of dated data, but still very effective to bring home one single point. This is not about all the environmental destructions and the nuclear fallout. But dear audience, think about the costs of maintaining nuclear weapons. This research report is available online, publicly accessible. The title of this one is Estimated Minimum Incurred Cost of the US Nuclear Weapons 40 to 1996. So Brookings Institution published this report, and just have a look onto the enormous scale of the investment is needed just to maintain it. And it is over $5.5 trillion up to 1996. And beyond that, I don't have exact data, but just imagine the category of expenditure which is mentioned here, the building the bomb and deploying the bomb and etc. etc. And just see this category. Deploying the bomb needs 57% of the total maintenance expenditure by the US. So it is really overwhelming to understand and know the requirement of such campaigns from the young generations to stop this nuclear weapon. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear audience, we would like to thank the young activists today, as well as the mentors, Estelle, Lamoureux, Maureen Brauer, those who have joined with us in this very important dialogue on the disarmament initiatives. And we'd like to also share the audience that we need more of young people, Rouge, Ali, and Avinash in this camp, because this is the question of our existence as a human race on this planet Earth. With this, I would like to end this session. And you are always free to watch the session in our homepage, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada. And please join hands in supporting Avinash and Rouge in their activism, in their campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. And we would like to thank all of you for joining with us. Stay well and stay safe. And from Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, I would like to endorse the campaign of Rooj, Ali, and Avinashpall. Thank you once again. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.